people, thanks for joining me for another edition of This Old Gibson. I'm Scotty D. I know we've gotten away from working on old Gibsons for a few weeks, so I think this one's going to be a whole lot of fun. It's an EB-1 from 1969, and we're going to be working on it today. It's going to be a lot of fun. This is some of the more interesting damage I've seen in my time of doing this kind of stuff. It's he used to set the bass up on one of those old Kustom cabinets. Remember the Kustom guitar amp and speaker? They made PAs and stuff, Kustom. I don't know if they're from Kentucky, but they're like padded speakers. They have this vinyl padding on them. They're really groovy. And there's a bowling alley here in town that has a ton of that shit in there. Like every stage, even in the diner, all around it. It's really kind of cool. There's a couple good dings here to look at. There's one over here. It's pretty bad. Let's start with this one. This is down here on the back side of the guitar, lower bout, bass side. Got me a little bit of lacquer retarder. And I got me a little teeny tiny little paintbrush. And I got me try to re-amalgamate this shit. Yeah. That might be good enough for that area. And even though I do believe this one's going to need drop filled, I'm going to put this retarder just around the edges to kind of rehydrate those cracks. Got to be careful with this stuff that it doesn't drip. So if I might have to roll it around in spots to let's look at this spot right here. So kind of re-amalgamating the lacquer. It's those when the lacquer is crushed, the crystals in it kind of they crush up and they reflect the light in a certain way that catches our eye, and this just reflows everything and gets rid of that shiny stuff. Now to get it level, I have to drop fill in some thicker lacquer. This is also the spot on the back. It's on the it's actually on the bass side. Here on the upper bout. Next, I'll take some lacquer that's been mixed with retarder, half and half, on a paintbrush and brush it in. This will give me an idea where our color is here. Seems a little lighter up here, but down here it seems like I think we'll live with the color. It seems a little bumpy, like just let that all melt together for a minute. This one also is really bumpy. I sanded it back a little with this. Here's a little shellac on a Q-tip. See how our color looks. It looks good. Some of that Glue Boost Fill and Finish Thin. And here's a little bit of the Accelerate. Accelerate. I squirt it onto the paper towel over by the exhaust fan so I don't have to breathe it as much. Anyways, this comes in a Pro formula too. This is the thin Pro formula. And this is, I guess, medium, but it's pretty thick. You kind of drop it right on there. It's amazing how quick this stuff dries. I want a itty bitty file. Got it perfectly smooth. It sure looks like we're going to need to add a little color on here. I just dry sanded this with 400 grit. This is after the fill and finish was smoothed out. And this wet paper towel, wet with naphtha, will kind of show us what it's going to look like color-wise. You know, it's okay. I think if the finish was all nice, it would blend right in. I've had some good results with this stuff lately, especially on curved surfaces like this. So I'm gonna see if I can open this up. Get a paper towel. Let's zoom out a little. I'm gonna fold it like this and add a little bit of the wipe-on poly. Now, if you're wondering what something like this will look like under a black light, it won't look good. Now, there are some other areas that didn't go right down to bare wood that actually don't look too bad right now under the black light. But whenever you have an area that's where the lacquer's been completely removed and you're down to bare wood, under a black light, it'll look like a big dark spot. So there are very few guitars from this era that don't have a few areas of lacquer missing. But this fills in all the 400 grit scratches, and it'll build up a slight coating over the course of, well, I wait 2 hours between coats, and I'll do like 5 coats today, and then tomorrow I can wet sand and polish it, and it'll be done next day kind of thing. If I did this with lacquer, it would take weeks, and it would still look bad under a black light because that piece of lacquer's forever gone. There's an interruption in the original. So if it doesn't get down to bare wood though, it's just in the clear, you can drop fill and go over top of it and it'll still look nice under a black light. Let's look at the black light. See? The color didn't change because I wiped that poly over this whole area. It only looks different under the area where there's no original lacquer. And there was another ding like over here that I did. I drop filled it already and you can't even see under the black light which spot it was. But these 2 spots, there's one here and that one there, are forever going to look like that unless the whole thing gets refinished. In between coats I use this gray Scotch-Brite pad, and now that I've whipped this thing out, I just remembered I forgot a very important step. I usually go over the entire area that I'm refinishing with Scotch-Brite pads and naphtha, and then I go over it with cotton balls and naphtha, and that cleans it really good so that we don't get any ugly witness lines around the repair. Naphtha, naphtha, naphtha. That cool, refreshing drink. We clean, clean, clean. You can even go outside the lines of where you're repairing. Most important thing is just to get the dirt, grime, guck off of it. Here's a cotton ball. Here's some naphtha, naphtha, naphtha. And I'm going to do this other spot over here while I'm at it, because it's also dirty, I'm sure. And the thing with it is just to rub, 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 rub. And it really minimizes witness lines, I'm telling you. I've done it. It works. It was an accident that I found this out, but I'm glad I did. I'm ready for another coat of the wipe-on poly. So I got the whole thing in the total vise kind of tipped this way because I want gravity to do some of the work here. I'm going to approach this one a little bit differently with some of this Loctite. I'm going to jam it in right here. This bottle's getting really low. I was just over at Home Depot. They had a 3-pack of this for $6.99. 3 for $6.99. I like the way this stuff kind of cures into a nice crispy sandable finish for this first coat. The film finish is good for closer to the top coat, but this stuff sands easier. The film finish is too flexible, so I'm still coming up with ideas on this. I'm thinking about using epoxy, real thin epoxy, get it to go into all these little pores. Or I'm thinking about lacquer retarder. What'd you call me? I have a good feeling about that. Of course, I'll have to wet sand and polish the entire back, but this could diminish the awful look significantly. Okay, after a few minutes, I can tell that it didn't level it out as much as I would need it to. So back to the epoxy idea. I think I'll do a test area up at the neck heel instead. There's a small area up there, plus I'm already working up there. Yes, I think this is my new test area right here. I'm going to clean it. I'm going to rub it to clean. Then I'm going to mix the epoxy super thin. This stuff right here. This is a non-structural application, so I'm going to use this craft grade casting resin. It's thin as can be, and I'm going to weigh it out equal parts. It has a Seymour Duncan pickup in it. I don't know if I mentioned that. So it's got this little switch. But anyways, I'm glad I didn't use that epoxy because it has bubbles in it. And there's a good chance it wouldn't have worked anyways. So I was talking to Ed in the shed, and he's interested in this guitar. I told the owner of this guitar, Jack, that Ed was in his shed thinking about it, and that he really liked the Kustom cabinet scars. He wouldn't change a thing. So Jack said, leave them. So I'm glad I didn't use that epoxy on there, because that could have just not worked anyways. It's all bubbly. Let me show you. So here I'll show you. And I was talking to Luke Heaton about this too, about spreading epoxy over lacquer for a pore filler. See all that? See all those bubbles? It's not crystal clear. I must have stirred it too often, or I should have stirred it once and set it aside. But he said there's a good chance that, you know, it might not adhere to lacquer very good unless you scuff it up, and there's just no way to scuff up every teeny little pit in those Kustom scars. So, you know, you could be sanding along later trying to level it out and just the whole thing peel off in one little sheet. So here's one of the areas that I've been drop filling for a couple days. I'm going to drop fill it till it feels like it's kind of raised up off the surface. I'll give it a week and it'll shrink down a little bit and we can wet sand and polish. Okay, here's another spot. Feels raised. There's a spot that I worked on with the wipe on, and there's that spot that was missing all the color and down to bare wood. It's not a perfect match. by any means. So that'll still need to be worked on a little bit. Here's that other spot. It's pretty smooth. There's a little dimple. And then there's some other, there's one. That's a lacquer drop fill. And then over here we did some too. I've scuffed it up again because I've decided it's just a little too red. So what I did is I took some shellac here with a little green, a little bit of this Kalamazoo. I'm just going to see if I can hit it. So I want to see if I can kind of brown it up. Brown and green. So let's see how we did. Another wipe. And if this turns out better, I don't mind that it sets me back another full day to get it looking a little better. You know? I mean, you gotta zoom in to see it. From this angle it looks better. Not as bad anyways. That's the problem with repairs. You can look at it one way, it looks great, and you look at it the other way and it looks like crap. Well, I took a week off and came back and decided to level sand those lacquer drop fills. I like using these micro files. I got one set from Harbor Freight and I have another set from Walmart, and it always works better than using sandpaper on a pad or doing, you know, pulling them sandpaper over the surface, at least for the initial leveling. After that filing, I'll go at it with some 600 paper, and I like using Simple Green as a lubricant. It's basically soapy water, so that's what they always tell you to do. Add a little soap to the water. For the poly areas, what I do is I wet sand it with 1500 and 2000 Stumac wet sandpaper. That's the gray stuff. And then I use Trizact, which is the 3000 grit. And after the Trizact, I hit it with Meguiar's polishing compound. This is the heavy cut stuff. For the back, I need to do the entire back. Well, the neck is buffing out nicely. Anyways, I'm going to take it downstairs to the garage and use the Stumac guitar buffer on the back. For the neck and the headstock, I never like to use the buffer. It catches the edges and it wants to pull it out of your hand. So it's in from the garage. I'm done buffing. Probably going to put this guitar up for sale at the beginning of 2024. I'll probably be gone by February. But this video will be out hopefully in time. If anybody likes this, contact me. Thanks for hanging out today with me, guys. Appreciate it. Very cool bass. Oh yeah, we gotta do, I have to tighten that output jack.